The stars looked peaceful from the bridge of the USS Liberty. Captain Jake Morrison stood near the main window, watching the distant lights twinkle in the darkness of space. His coffee had gone cold 20 minutes ago, but he didn't care. After 3 months of patrol duty near Kepler Station, he had grown used to the quiet beauty of the void. "Captain," called Lieutenant Amy Brooks from her station, "I'm picking up something strange on long-range sensors." Jake turned away from the window and walked to her console. Amy was young but sharp, fresh out of the academy with the highest marks in her class. She never called out sensor readings unless something was really wrong. "What do you see?" Jake asked, leaning over her shoulder to look at the display. Amy's fingers danced across the controls, bringing up a clearer image. "Multiple contacts, sir. Big ones. At least 200 ships moving in formation about 6 hours away from our position." Jake felt his stomach drop. 200 ships was not a trade convoy or exploration fleet. That was an armada. He had never seen anything like it in his 15 years of service. "Are they human ships?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "No, sir," Amy replied, her voice tight with worry. "The energy signatures are completely unknown. These aren't like any vessels in our database." Jake straightened up and looked around the bridge. His crew of 42 men and women were good people, but they had never faced anything like this. The Liberty was a destroyer, built for patrol work and small conflicts. She was tough, but she was just one ship. "Chief Collins," Jake called to, his engineer over the comm system. "Yes, sir," came the reply from the engine room. "I want all systems running at full power. Check everything twice." "Already on it, Captain." "Something tells me we're going to need every bit of juice we can get." Pete Collins had been an engineer for 20 years. He knew ships better than anyone Jake had ever met. If Pete was worried, then they were all in trouble. Jake turned to his communications officer. "Lisa, try to make contact with those ships. Use standard first contact protocols." Lisa Grant nodded and began working at her station. She was calm under pressure, which Jake appreciated. "Broadcasting on all frequencies, sir. Universal peace signals and mathematical sequences." For 10 minutes, they waited. The alien fleet continued to approach, but there was no response to their messages. Jake watched the sensor display as the ships grew closer. Each vessel was massive, easily 3 times the size of the Liberty. "Still no response, Captain," Lisa reported. "They're not even acknowledging our transmissions." Jake rubbed his chin, thinking hard. First contact with alien life should have been a moment of celebration for all humanity. Instead, it felt like watching a storm approach. Something about the way the alien ships moved in perfect formation made his military instincts scream warnings. "Captain," Amy called out again. "They've changed course. They're heading directly for us now." The bridge fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Jake could feel the tension in the air as his crew realized what was happening. The alien fleet wasn't just passing through human space. They were coming for the Liberty. "Sir," Lisa said quietly, "should I send a distress signal back to Earth?" Jake thought about it for a moment. Earth was weeks away, even with faster-than-light communication. By the time any help arrived, whatever was going to happen would be long over. "Not yet," he decided. "Let's see what they want first." The alien fleet continued to approach for another hour. Jake could see them clearly on the main screen now. Dark shapes against the stars that looked nothing like human ships. They were all curves and smooth lines, beautiful in a strange way, but also threatening. "Incoming transmission," Lisa announced suddenly. "Put it on the main screen," Jake ordered. The view screen flickered, and then an alien face appeared. The creature had pale blue skin and large dark eyes that seemed to look right through Jake. When it spoke, the universal translator made its voice sound cold and mechanical. "Unknown vessel," the alien said. "You will surrender immediately. Lower your shields and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction." Jake felt his crew tense around him. He could hear Amy's sharp intake of breath and the whispered curse from someone at the back of the bridge. The alien's message was clear and simple. Surrender or die. Jake stood up straight and looked directly at the alien on the screen. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Liberty. You have entered human space without permission. State your intentions." The alien's expression didn't change. "I am Commander Vextel of the Zephyrian Armada. We do not ask permission. We take what we want. Your species is now under our protection. You will comply or be eliminated." "Protection?" Jake almost laughed. "Is that what you call conquest these days?" Commander Vextel's dark eyes narrowed slightly. "Your resistance is pointless. We have conquered 47 worlds. Your primitive technology cannot stand against us. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was scared. He could see it in their faces, but they were also angry. Humans didn't like being threatened, especially not in their own space. "I have a counteroffer," Jake said calmly. "Turn your fleet around and leave human space. Don't come back. Do that and we won't have a problem." Several of the alien ship commanders appeared on smaller screens around Vextal. Jake could hear them making sounds that might have been laughter. "Your arrogance amuses me," Vextal said. "One small ship against our entire fleet. Very well. We will give you a demonstration of our power." The transmission ended, and the main screen switched back to a view of the alien fleet. Jake watched. As several of the largest ships moved forward, their weapons beginning to glow with energy. "Captain," Amy said urgently, "they're charging weapons, multiple ships targeting us." Jake walked back to his command chair and sat down. He pressed a button that opened communication to the entire ship. "All hands, this is the captain. We have encountered a hostile alien force that has demanded our surrender. They've threatened to destroy us if we don't comply." He paused, looking around the bridge at his crew. "I don't know about you, but I didn't join the Earth fleet to surrender to bullies. Battle stations. This is not a drill." Alarms began to sound throughout the ship as his crew rushed to their positions. Jake could hear Pete Collins over the comm system, shouting orders to his engineering team. Amy's fingers flew over her tactical controls, bringing weapons and shields online. "Sir," Amy reported. "Shields at maximum. All weapons ready." Jake watched as the alien ships completed their targeting. In a few seconds, they would fire their warning shots. He knew they expected him to surrender after seeing their power. They were about to learn something about humans that 47 other species had never had the chance to teach them. "Lisa," Jake said quietly, "send them one more message." "What? Should I tell them, sir?" Jake smiled grimly as the first alien weapons fired across the Liberty's bow, lighting up space with brilliant energy. "Tell them they fired first." The alien warning shots lit up space like deadly fireworks. Captain Jake Morrison watched the energy beams pass just above his ship, close enough that the Liberty's shields flickered from the heat. On any other day, those shots would have been beautiful. Today, they meant war. "Message sent, sir," Lisa reported from her communication station. Jake nodded and turned to Amy at tactical. "Lieutenant Brooks, target their lead ship, full spread of torpedoes." Amy's hands hesitated over her controls for just a moment. She was looking at her sensors, and Jake could see the worry in her eyes. "Sir, there are over 200 of them. We're just one ship." "Amy," Jake said gently, "how many ships did the 300 Spartans have at Thermopylae?" She looked at him with confusion. "None, sir. They were soldiers, not sailors." "Exactly, and they held off the entire Persian army." Jake sat forward, in his command chair. "We're not just one ship, Lieutenant. We're a human ship. Fire torpedoes." Amy's training took over. Her fingers danced across the tactical display, selecting targets and calculating firing solutions. "Torpedoes loaded and ready, sir. Targeting the flagship." "Fire." The Liberty shuddered slightly as 6 quantum torpedoes shot out from her forward tubes. The weapons streaked through space, leaving trails of blue energy behind them. Jake watched on the main screen as they closed the distance to the alien flagship in seconds. Commander Vextal had been expecting the human ship to surrender after his demonstration. He had done this same routine 47 times with 47 different species. Show overwhelming force, fire warning shots, accept surrender. It was simple and effective. He was not expecting return fire. "Commander," shouted his weapons officer, "the human ship has launched missiles." Vextal spun around to look at his tactical display. 6 small objects were racing toward his flagship. He almost laughed. 6 tiny missiles against his massive ship with its powerful shields. "Ray shields," he ordered calmly. "Let them waste their ammunition." The first torpedo hit the Zephyrian flagship's shields and exploded in a burst of quantum energy. The ship's protective barrier flared bright, blue and held. Vextal smiled, just as he expected. Then the second torpedo hit, and the third, and the fourth. Each explosion was bigger than the last. The quantum warheads were designed to feed off energy, growing stronger with each detonation. By the time the fifth torpedo struck, the flagship's shields were failing. The sixth torpedo punched through completely and slammed into the ship's hull. The Zephyrian flagship rocked violently. Lights went out across several decks. Vextal grabbed his command chair to keep from falling as his ship shook around him. "Damage. Report," he shouted. "Shields down to 30%. His engineer called back. "Hull breach on deck 7. We have casualties." Vextal stared at his tactical display in shock. One small human ship had just hurt his flagship with a single attack. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever damaged his vessel on the first strike. "What kind of weapons are those?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. The energy signature is completely different from anything in our database." Back on the Liberty, Jake watched the results of their attack with grim satisfaction. The alien flagship was wounded but still fighting. Amy was already preparing the next strike. "Good shot, Lieutenant," Jake said. "Now let's see what they do." He didn't have to wait long. The entire alien fleet began to move. Ships that had been hanging back in formation suddenly accelerated forward. Energy weapons began charging on dozens of vessels. "Captain," Amy reported, "all enemy ships are targeting us. I count over 400 weapon locks." Jake felt his crew tense around him. 400 weapons. Even the Liberty's tough shields wouldn't survive that kind of bombardment. But Jake had spent his whole career studying military history. He knew that sometimes the best defense was a good offense. "Set course directly for the center of their formation," he ordered. "Full speed ahead." "Sir?" Amy looked at him like he had lost his mind. "That's suicide." "No," Jake said calmly. "That's tactics. They expect us to run or try to fight from long range. They're not ready for us to charge straight at them." Pete Collins's voice came over the comm from the engine room. "Captain, you want me to give you everything we've got?" "Everything and then some, Chief. Push the engines past the red line if you have to." "Aye, sir. Hang on to something up there." The Liberty suddenly shot forward like a bullet. Jake felt himself pressed back into his seat as the ship accelerated toward the alien fleet. On the main screen, the enemy ships grew larger and larger. The Zephyrian commanders were caught completely off guard. In 47 previous conquests, not one species had ever charged directly at their fleet. Most tried to run. A few tried to fight from a distance. None had ever done what the humans were doing now. "They're coming straight at us!" Vextal's tactical officer shouted. "What do we do?" Vextal had no answer. His battle plans didn't cover this situation. The human ship was moving so fast and so directly that his gunners couldn't get a clear shot without risking hitting their own vessels. "All ships break formation," he ordered. "Spread out, don't let them get between us." But it was too late. The Liberty punched through the alien formation like an arrow through tissue paper. As she passed between the massive alien ships, Amy opened fire with everything they had. Railgun rounds tore through alien hulls. Plasma cannons melted armor plating. Missile clusters found their targets and exploded in brilliant flashes. The Liberty was small and fast, darting between the huge alien vessels like a wolf among sheep. "Got one!" Amy shouted as an alien cruiser exploded off their starboard side. "Make that two!" Jake watched the tactical display as red dots representing enemy ships began winking out. The aliens were so surprised by the human attack that they were firing wildly, sometimes hitting their own ships by mistake. "Lisa," Jake called to his communications officer. "Are you picking up their radio chatter?" "Yes, sir," Lisa replied, her voice excited. "The universal translator is working overtime, but I'm getting bits and pieces. They're scared, sir." "Scared?" Jake almost couldn't believe it. "Of us?" "They keep asking each other what kind of species fights like this. One of them called us void-born predators, whatever that means. Jake smiled grimly. Void-born predators. He liked that. It had a nice ring to it. The Liberty completed her charge through the alien formation and came around for another pass. Behind them, the alien fleet was in chaos. Ships were colliding as they tried to avoid the small human vessel. Commanders were shouting conflicting orders. Some ships were trying to retreat while others were trying to attack. Amy, Jake said, pick your targets. Let's show them what human persistence looks like. As the Liberty began her second attack, Jake thought about all the history lessons he had learned in the academy. Humans had always been fighters. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that would have destroyed other species. They had climbed to the top of the food chain on their own planet through sheer determination and cleverness. Now, among the stars, it seemed like nothing had changed. Humanity was still what it had always been, the galaxy's most dangerous predator. The Liberty spun through space like a deadly dancer, weaving between the massive alien ships. Captain Jake Morrison gripped his command chair as his ship rolled and twisted, avoiding the desperate fire from the confused enemy fleet. Amy Brooks had become one with her tactical station, her fingers moving like lightning as she picked off target after target. Third enemy ship destroyed, Amy called out, her voice filled with excitement. Their formation is completely broken. Jake watched, the main screen as alien vessels scattered in all directions. Some were trying to retreat, others were firing wildly, and a few had collided with each other in their panic. It was the most beautiful chaos he had ever seen. Chief Collins, Jake called over the comm. How are my engines holding up? Pete's voice came back strained but determined. She's running hot, Captain, but she's holding together. These old Earth engines weren't built to quit. That was Pete Collins for you. The man could make a broken coffee maker run a marathon if he had. So Jake had complete faith in his chief engineer. Lisa, Jake turned to his communications officer. What are the aliens saying now? Lisa's face was pale as she listened to the intercepted transmissions. Sir, they're calling for reinforcements, but that's not the scary part. They're also sending warnings to their home fleet. They're telling them that humans are different. Different how? They say we fight like nothing they've ever seen. One commander called us the hunters from the dark, and another one said we're death-given form. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The aliens weren't just scared. They were terrified. In all of human history, his species had been the one doing the conquering. They had never been on the other side of first contact. Now he was beginning to understand what it felt like to be the monster in someone else's nightmare. Commander Vextal's flagship was burning. 3 decks were without power, and his shields were down to 15%. His weapons officer was dead, killed when a human missile had punched through their hull. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to keep the ship operational. Status report, Vextal demanded. 17 ships destroyed, his tactical officer reported, her voice shaking. 23 more damaged. The humans have taken no significant damage. Vextal couldn't believe what he was hearing. One small ship against his entire fleet, and they were losing. It was impossible. His Zephyrian armada had conquered nearly 50 worlds. They were the masters of this sector of space. How is this possible? He whispered. His science officer looked up from her station, her pale blue skin even paler than usual. Commander, I've been analyzing their attack patterns. This isn't random fighting. They're using our own formation against us. Explain. The humans are forcing us to shoot at each other. Every time we try to target them, they position themselves so our shots hit our own ships, and they're using the asteroid field as cover, making it impossible for us to use our long-range weapons effectively. Vextal stared at the tactical display. She was right. The human ship wasn't just fighting them, it was hunting them. Using the environment, their own numbers, and their confusion as weapons. What kind of species learns to fight like this? He asked. Back on the Liberty, Jake was thinking the same thing from the other side. His ancestors had learned to hunt in packs, to use terrain as an advantage, and to turn the environment itself into a weapon. They had survived on a planet full of predators by becoming the ultimate predator themselves. Captain, Amy called out. I'm detecting a problem. Some of the alien ships are trying to form up again. If they get organized, they might be able to coordinate their fire. Jake nodded. He had been expecting this. The aliens were smart. They would eventually figure out how to counter his tactics. He needed to make sure they didn't get the chance. Set course for that group of asteroids, he ordered. We're going to play hide and seek. The Liberty dove toward a cluster of floating rocks, each one the size of a small moon. The alien ships followed, but they were too big to navigate safely through the tight spaces. Jake smiled as he watched them struggle to keep up. Amy, pick off any ship that gets too close. Make them afraid to follow us. With pleasure, sir. The Liberty vanished into the asteroid field like a ghost. The alien ships circled outside, afraid to follow but unwilling to leave. It was the perfect trap. For the next hour, Jake played a deadly game of cat and mouse with the alien fleet. The Liberty would appear from behind an asteroid, fire a few shots, and then disappear again before the aliens could respond. Each attack took out another enemy ship or damaged one badly enough to force it to retreat. This is incredible, Lisa whispered as she watched another alien cruiser explode. They can't touch us in here. Jake was beginning to understand something important about his species. Humans weren't just good at fighting. They were good at thinking while fighting. They could adapt, change tactics, and learn from their mistakes faster than their enemies could keep up. Sir, Amy said suddenly, I'm reading something strange. The alien ships are starting to retreat. Jake looked at the sensor display. She was right. The remaining alien vessels were pulling back, forming a defensive line far from the asteroid field. They weren't attacking anymore. They were just trying to survive. How many ships have we destroyed? Jake asked. Amy checked her readings. 43. Confirmed kills, sir. At least 30 more heavily damaged. Out of their original 200 ships, less than half are still combat effective. Jake felt his chest tighten. One human ship had destroyed or disabled over half of an alien armada. When the history books were written, no one would believe it. Captain, Lisa called out urgently. I'm intercepting a transmission. The aliens are calling for immediate evacuation of this sector. They're telling their command that humans are too dangerous to engage. They want to retreat? More than that, sir. They're recommending that their entire empire avoid human space completely. Jake leaned back in his command chair. The battle was over and humanity had won. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger had just happened. First Contact was supposed to be about making friends, sharing knowledge, and expanding into the galaxy together. Instead, humanity had just announced itself to the universe as something to be feared. Sir, Amy said quietly, should we pursue them? Finish them off? Jake thought about it. He could probably destroy the rest of the alien fleet if he wanted to. They were broken, scattered, and afraid. It would be easy. But that wasn't what humans were supposed to be. They were explorers, scientists, and builders. They were supposed to be better than just killers. No, Jake decided. Let them go. They came here looking for an easy conquest. Instead, they found something they weren't prepared for. Let them carry that message back to their people. The Liberty emerged from the asteroid field and took position in clear space. Around them, the surviving alien ships continued their retreat, moving as fast as their damaged engines could carry them. Jake opened a channel to the alien fleet. This is Captain Morrison. You came to human space uninvited and opened fire on my ship. We defended ourselves. Tell your leaders that humanity seeks peace, but we are prepared for war. The choice is yours. He closed the channel and looked around. His bridge. His crew was exhausted but proud. They had faced impossible odds and won through skill, determination, and the kind of fighting spirit that had carried humanity from caves to the stars. The real question now was what would happen when the aliens went home and told their people about the humans who fought like demons and showed no fear. 3 days later, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his ready room aboard the Liberty, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. His ship was heading back to Earth at maximum speed, carrying news that would change everything. The door chimed and Lieutenant Amy Brooks entered. She looked tired but alert. None of them had slept much since the fight. Sir, we're receiving transmissions from all over the galaxy, Amy reported. It seems word about our battle is spreading fast. Jake rubbed his eyes. What kind of transmissions? Mixed, sir. Some species are asking if humans are available as mercenaries. Others are warning their fleets to avoid our space completely. And a few are asking if we're interested in forming alliances. Jake almost laughed. 3 days ago, humanity had been alone in the galaxy. Now it seemed like everyone wanted to either hire them or hide from them. Any word from the Zephyrians? Yes, sir. Our long-range sensors picked up their emergency broadcasts. They're telling their entire empire to classify human space as a red zone. No ships are to enter our territory under any circumstances. Jake stood up and walked to the small window. In his ready room. Outside, the stars looked the same as they always had. But he knew that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer the new species trying to find its place in the galaxy. They were now the species that other civilizations measured themselves against on Earth. Admiral Susan Carter stood in the Situation Room at Fleet Command reading Captain Morrison's preliminary report for the 3rd time. Around the conference table sat the most important people in human government and military leadership. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said President William Hayes, leaning forward in his chair. One of our destroyers encountered a fleet of 200 alien warships and not only survived but destroyed over half of them. That's correct, Mr. President, Admiral Carter replied. The Liberty is currently en route back to Earth with full battle recordings and detailed sensor data. Defense Secretary Patricia Wells shook her head in amazement. How is that possible? Our war games never showed anything like this. Admiral Carter had been thinking about that same question for hours. I believe it comes down to one simple fact. Every other species in the galaxy appears to have evolved from prey animals or peaceful creatures. Humans evolved from predators. We're the only species that spent millions of years learning how to hunt and kill to survive. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed that information. What are the implications? Asked the President. We're going to become the most feared species in known space, Admiral Carter said bluntly. Every alien civilization is going to have to decide whether they want us as friends or enemies. There won't be a middle ground. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the news of humanity's victory was spreading like wildfire. On the peaceful world of Ketra Prime, the Council of Elders met in emergency session. The Zephyrians have ruled this sector for 3 centuries, Elder Moran said, her feathers ruffled with worry. If the humans could defeat them so easily, what does that mean for the rest of us? Elder Tosk consulted his datapad. According to the reports, the humans didn't even use their full military. This was just one patrol ship. One ship, Elder, Miran repeated. One ship destroyed an armada. Perhaps we should send ambassadors to Earth, suggested Elder Vex. It might be wise to make friends with these humans before someone decides to make them enemies. On the war-torn planet of Rigel 7, General Krath of the Resistance Army read the same reports with very different thoughts. His people had been fighting the Zephyrian occupation for 50 years with little success. Contact these humans immediately, he ordered his communications officer. If they can break Zephyrian power, they might be willing to help us drive the invaders from our world. Sir, what if they demand payment? What could we possibly offer them? General Krath smiled grimly. Information. We'll tell them everything. We know about Zephyrian tactics, ship designs, and weaknesses. If the humans are as good at war as these reports suggest, that knowledge will be worth more than gold to them. Back on the Liberty, Jake received another communication from Earth. Admiral Carter's face appeared on his screen, looking serious. Captain Morrison, I need you to understand the situation you've created, she began. Our communication networks are being flooded with messages from alien species across the galaxy. Some want to hire us, some want to ally with us, and some are begging us not to attack them. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Admiral, we were just defending ourselves. I know that, Captain, but the rest of the galaxy doesn't see it that way. They see a species that can destroy a superior force without breaking a sweat. You've made humanity the apex predator of known space. What are your orders, ma'am? Admiral Carter paused before answering. Come home, Captain. We have a lot of work to do. The President is calling for an emergency expansion of the fleet. If we're going to be the galaxy's top predator, we need to be ready for everything that comes with that responsibility." The transmission ended, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts. He walked back to the bridge where his crew was still monitoring communications from across the galaxy. "Lisa," he called to his communications officer, "are you still picking up alien chatter?" "Yes, sir, it's actually getting more intense. I'm hearing at least 12 different languages, and the universal translator is working overtime." "What are they saying?" Lisa listened for a moment before responding. "A lot of it is military traffic, sir. Fleets changing course to avoid human space. Defense plans being updated, emergency meetings being called." Jake nodded. The galaxy was reacting to humanity's presence, and not all of those reactions would be friendly. Chief Pete Collins emerged from the elevator, wiping grease from his hands. "Captain, I've been thinking about something." "What's that, Chief?" "We won that battle, but it wasn't because our technology was so much better than theirs. Their ships were bigger and more advanced than ours." "So why did we win?" Pete smiled. "Because we're human, sir. We've been fighting and surviving for millions of years. Every other species in the galaxy apparently learned to run from danger. We learned to face it head on." Jake realized Pete was right. The Liberty hadn't won because of superior firepower or better shields. They had won because humans knew how to fight when the odds were against them. They knew how to adapt, improvise, and never give up. As the Liberty continued toward Earth, Captain Jake Morrison made a decision. When he got home, he would recommend that humanity approach the galaxy with caution and wisdom. They had proven they could fight, but now they needed to prove they could be more than just warriors. The galaxy had learned that humans were dangerous. Now it was time to show them that humans could also be just. But Jake had no illusions about what the future would bring. Humanity had announced itself to the universe not as explorers or diplomats, but as the species that other civilizations would have nightmares about. The age of human expansion into the galaxy had begun, and it would be written in the stars with fire and blood. The universe would never be the same.